The dust had barely settled on the horizon when Penelope Harris saw the silhouette of a rider approaching Val Verde, and something in her chest told her this was the moment she had waited 10 years to see. She stood on the porch of the general store, her hand shielding her eyes from the late afternoon sun of September 1882, watching as the figure grew clearer with each passing second. The heat rippled off the Texas earth, making everything shimmer like a dream, but she knew this was real. Her father had told her to stop looking. Her mother, rest her soul, had begged her before she passed to move on with her life. Even her best friend Martha had given up trying to convince her that Robert Reed would never come back to Val Verde. But Penelope had never stopped believing. Not when the first year passed without a letter. Not when the second year brought whispers that he must be dead. Not even when 5 years turned to 10, and everyone in town looked at her with that particular kind of pity reserved for spinsters who clung to impossible dreams. The rider was close enough now that she could see the set of his shoulders, the way he sat in the saddle like he was born there. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She gripped the porch railing, her knuckles white. "Penny, you all right?" Her father emerged from the store, carrying a crate of canned goods. Harold Harris was a practical man who had long since given up on romance, especially after his wife died 3 years back. "You look like you have seen a ghost." "Papa," she whispered, unable to tear her eyes away from the approaching rider. "I think it is him." Harold set down the crate with a thud that sent dust flying. He followed her gaze, squinting into the sun. "Now, Penny, we have been through this before. Every time a stranger rides into town, you think it is that Reed boy. It is different this time, I know it." The rider was close enough now that she could see his face, weathered and sun-darkened, older than the 20-year-old boy who had ridden away, but unmistakable. Robert Reed. The man who had promised to come back for her, who had kissed her under the cottonwood tree by the creek and sworn he would make his fortune and return to marry her. He had been gone exactly 10 years, 2 months and 14 days. Not that she was counting. Robert brought his horse to a stop in front of the store, and for a long moment, they just stared at each other. He looked harder now, with lines around his eyes that had not been there before, and a scar running along his jaw that was new. But his eyes were the same deep brown she remembered, the ones that had looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "Penelope," he said, and his voice was rougher, deeper, but still sent shivers down her spine. She wanted to run to him, to throw herself into his arms like the foolish 28-year-old woman she was, but pride and 10 years of waiting kept her feet planted on the porch. "Robert." He dismounted slowly, as if he too was uncertain of his welcome. His horse snorted and stamped, sensing the tension in the air. Harold stood behind Penelope like a protective wall, his arms crossed over his chest. "I said I would come back," Robert said, taking a tentative step forward. 10 years, Penelope replied, and she hated how her voice shook. "You said you would come back. You did not say it would take 10 years. "I know." He removed his hat, holding it in his hands like a penitent man in church. "I know, and I am sorrier than I can ever say. But I am here now, Penny. I came back for you just like I promised." Harold made a noise somewhere between a snort and a growl. "A little late for that, do not you think, boy? My daughter has spent the best years of her life waiting for you. 10 years, Reed. Do you have any idea what that does to a person? Papa, please." Penelope put a hand on her father's arm, but she did not take her eyes off Robert. "Let him speak." Robert's jaw tightened. "You are right, Mr. Harris. You are absolutely right. I do not deserve her forgiveness, and I certainly do not deserve her love after what I have put her through. But I am asking for it anyway, because I have thought about nothing but Penelope every single day I was gone. Every hardship, Every setback, every night sleeping under the stars or in some God-forsaken mining camp, all I could think about was getting back to her. Mining camp. Penelope stepped down from the porch, moving closer despite herself. You went to the gold fields and the silver mines and tried my hand at ranching in Montana and worked as a trail hand driving cattle to Kansas. Robert's eyes never left hers. Everything I did to build something worthy of you. I know I said I would be gone a year, maybe 2, but nothing went the way I planned. The first claim was a bust, lost everything in a flood the second year. Third year, the partner I trusted ran off with what little we had made. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered so well it made her chest ache. I could have come back then, come back with nothing and asked you to marry a poor man, but I made you a promise, Penny. I promised I would give you a real life, a home, security. And I was too proud and too stubborn to come back until I could keep that promise. I never asked for riches, Penelope said softly, close enough now that she could have reached out and touched him. I asked for you. I know that now. His voice broke slightly. I know, and I was a fool. But I have it now, Penny. Everything I promised and more. I struck silver in Nevada 2 years ago, made enough to buy land, build a home, start the kind of life I always dreamed of giving you. 2 years ago, Harold repeated, his voice sharp. So why are we only seeing you now? Robert's expression darkened. Because I was shot during a robbery at the claim. Took a bullet to the chest and another to the leg. Spent 6 months recovering, another year making sure the claim was secure and the money was safely in the bank. I was not going to risk dying before I could get back to her, and I was not going to risk losing what I had earned. Penelope's hand flew to her mouth. She could see it now, the way he stood slightly favoring one leg, the careful way he had dismounted. You were shot. I survived. He took another step closer, so close now she could smell the trail dust on him, the leather and horse and something uniquely Robert. Nothing could have kept me from coming back to you, Penelope. Not bullets, not bad luck, not all the years in between. I love you. I have loved you since we were children playing by the creek. I loved you when I rode away, and I love you now, standing here begging you to forgive me for taking so long. She could feel tears burning behind her eyes, years of hope and fear and loneliness threatening to spill over. I never stopped believing you would come back. Penny, he breathed, and then she was in his arms and nothing else mattered. Not the 10 years, not the pain, not the watching townspeople or her father's disapproval. Robert held her like she was the most precious thing in the world, and she held him back just as tightly, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart against hers. I never stopped believing, she repeated against his chest. Everyone told me I was foolish, that you were dead or had forgotten me, but I knew you would come back. I am so sorry. He buried his face in her hair, and she could hear the emotion in his voice. I am so sorry I made you wait. I am sorry I put you through that. But I am here now, and if you will have me, I will never leave your side again. She pulled back just enough to look up at him, tears streaming down her face. Promise me this is real, that you are really here and not going to disappear again. I promise. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. I am never leaving you again, Penelope Harris. Never. Harold cleared his throat loudly. All well and good, but words are easy, Reed. What exactly are your intentions toward my daughter? Robert released Penelope reluctantly, turning to face her father with his shoulders squared. My intentions are to marry her, Mr. Harris, as soon as she will have me. I have a deed to 300 acres of prime grazing land in Colorado, a house already built, and enough money in the bank to ensure she will never want for anything. I know I do not deserve her after what I have done, but I am asking for your blessing anyway. Colorado, Penelope said, the reality of it sinking in. You want me to leave Val Verde. I want you with me, wherever that is. Robert took her hand, his rough fingers intertwining with hers. But if you cannot leave, if this is where you need to be, then I will sell the land in Colorado and we will make our life here. I meant what I said, Penny. I am never leaving your side again. Harold studied Robert for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. Finally, he sighed. You broke my daughter's heart once, Reed. If you do it again, I will hunt you down myself. Understood, understood, sir. And you have my word it will not happen. I would die before I hurt her again. Well then. Harold picked up his crate. I suppose you two have a lot to talk about. Penny, do not stay out too late. And Reed, you can stable your horse at the livery. I expect you will be staying in town for a while. As Harold disappeared back into the store, Penelope felt a bubble of laughter rising in her throat. That is as close to a blessing as you are likely to get from him. I will take it. Robert grinned, and for a moment she could see the boy she had fallen in love with all those years ago. Can we walk? I have so much to tell you and this street feels too public. She nodded, and they walked together toward the edge of town, toward the cottonwood tree by the creek where they had said goodbye a decade ago. The late afternoon sun painted everything golden, and Penelope felt like she was moving through a dream. How many times had she imagined this moment? How many nights had she lain awake wondering if she would ever see him again? When they reached the tree, Robert spread his coat on the ground for her to sit, then settled beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. The creek burbled softly, the same sound that had provided the soundtrack to their childhood. Tell me everything, Penelope said. Do not leave anything out. I want to know where you have been, what you have done. I want to know about the 10 years I missed. So he told her. He told her about the grueling journey to California, about the tent cities full of desperate men seeking fortune. He told her about working claims that yielded nothing but fool's gold and broken dreams. He told her about the flood that washed away his first real success, and the partner who betrayed him, and the long, hard winter he spent in Montana working cattle, saving every penny he could. He told her about Nevada, about the silver claim that finally paid off, about the moment he realized he had done it. He had achieved what he set out to do. And he told her about the robbery, about the moment he thought he was going to die without ever seeing her again. I made the surgeon promise, Robert said, his voice quiet. When he was digging the bullet out of my chest and I was half out of my mind with fever, I made him promise that if I died, he would send word to you. I had a letter already written, have had one written since the first year I was gone. It is in my saddlebag. I wrote it in case I never made it back, so you would know that I tried, that I never stopped loving you. Penelope felt fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I do not want to read a letter. I want to hear it from you. Tell me you love me. Tell me again so I know it is real. I love you, Penelope Harris. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. I love you more than I have words to express. You are the reason I survived every hardship. You are the dream that kept me going when I wanted to give up. And if you will marry me, I promise to spend every day for the rest of my life proving to you that you were right to believe in me. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. He kissed her then, and it was like coming home. It was 10 years of loneliness and hope and faith, all wrapped up in one perfect moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Penelope rested her forehead against his. When? She asked. When do you want to get married? Tomorrow, if you will have me. But I suppose you will want time to plan, to get a proper dress made, to invite people. She laughed. Robert Reed, I have been planning this wedding in my head for 10 years. I know exactly what I want, and it does not require months of preparation. 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks to make arrangements, and then we can be married. 2 weeks, he agreed, pulling her close again. I can survive 2 more weeks. Barely. They sat by the creek until the sun began to set, talking about everything and nothing. Penelope told him about the years he had missed, about her mother's death, and how hard it had been on her father, about the changes in Val Verde, about the small moments of her life that had accumulated while she waited. It felt surreal to have him here, solid and real beside her, after so long of only having memories and hope. When the sky turned purple and the first stars began to appear, Robert walked her back to the house behind the general store. He kissed her good night on the porch, sweet and tender, and promised to return first thing in the morning. Penelope floated into the house, her heart so full she thought it might burst. Her father was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of him. "So he really came back," Harold said, his voice neutral. "He really came back, Papa." Penelope sat down across from him. "And I am going to marry him, 2 weeks from Saturday." Harold was quiet for a long moment. "You are sure about this? 10 years is a long time. People change. I am sure." "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." "Then I suppose I had better start figuring out how to give away my only daughter." Harold's gruff expression softened. "Your mother would have been happy to see this. She always liked that Reed boy, even when I thought he was no good for making you wait." "She did she?" Penelope smiled, remembering her mother's gentle encouragement during those long years. "She did. Said anyone who could inspire that kind of loyalty must be worth something." Harold reached across the table and squeezed his daughter's hand. "I just want you to be happy, Penny. That is all I have ever wanted." "I am happy, Papa. Happier than I have been in 10 years. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Penelope threw herself into wedding preparations with an energy born of a decade of pent-up dreams. Martha, who had been skeptical of Robert's return, became her most enthusiastic helper once she met him and saw the way he looked at Penelope. "I owe you an apology," Martha said one afternoon as they worked on Penelope's dress. "I should have believed in him like you did." "You were trying to protect me," Penelope replied, carefully stitching lace onto the bodice. "I cannot fault you for that." Robert spent those 2 weeks integrating himself back into Val Verde, helping at the general store, getting reacquainted with the people who remembered him as a wild young man full of dreams. Some were skeptical, some were welcoming, but all of them could see the way he and Penelope fit together, like two pieces of a puzzle that had been separated too long. One evening, a week before the wedding, they sat together on the porch of the boarding house where Robert was staying. The night was warm, full of the sounds of crickets and distant music from the saloon down the street. "Tell me about Colorado," Penelope said, leaning against his shoulder. "Tell me about the house you built." Robert's arm tightened around her. "It is not fancy, but it is solid. 2 stories, 4 bedrooms. I built it myself with help from a few neighbors. There is a porch that wraps around 3 sides, and from the front you can see the mountains. The land is good, plenty of water, good grass for cattle. I already have a small herd started. 4 bedrooms. Penelope raised an eyebrow. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I was planning ahead, hoping for a family if you want that." "I do want that." She turned to look at him. "I want everything with you, Robert. The house, the land, children. I want the life we dreamed about when we were young. You are going to have it all." He kissed the top of her head. "I promise you, Penny, everything I have is yours." "I do not care about the money or the land," she said softly. "I just care about you. If you had come back with nothing but the clothes on your back, I still would have said yes. I know. That is why I had to come back with more." He cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheek. "You deserve the world, and I intend to give it to you." The night before the wedding, Penelope lay in bed, too excited to sleep. Tomorrow she would finally marry Robert Reid. Tomorrow, after 10 years of waiting, her life would truly begin. She heard a soft tap on her window and started, then smiled when she saw Robert standing below, looking up at her window like a lovesick teenager. "What are you doing?" she whispered, leaning out. "You are going to wake Papa." "I needed to see you," he whispered back. "Come down." "Robert, it is bad luck to see the bride before the wedding. We have had 10 years of bad luck. I think we have served our time." His grin was visible even in the moonlight. "Please, Penny, just for a minute." She should have said no. She should have been sensible and proper and stayed in her room. Instead, she pulled on a shawl and crept down the stairs, careful not to wake her father. Robert was waiting by the back door, and as soon as she stepped outside, he pulled her into his arms. "Could not sleep," he murmured against her hair. "Kept thinking about how tomorrow you are going to be my wife, and I had to make sure it was real, that you were real." "I am real." She pressed her hand over his heart, feeling the steady beat beneath her palm. "And tomorrow cannot come soon enough." They stood together in the quiet darkness, holding each other, no words needed. Finally, Robert reluctantly released her. "I should let you get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." "The best day," Penelope corrected. "The best day of my life, mine too." He kissed her softly. "I love you, Penelope Harris. See you at the church." "I love you too. Now go before Papa catches you and decides to shoot you after all." The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, the October sky a brilliant blue that seemed to promise nothing but good things ahead. Penelope woke early, her stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. Martha arrived shortly after breakfast to help her get ready, along with 2 other friends from town. The dress was simple but beautiful, white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, fitted at the waist and flowing to the floor. Martha had helped her make a crown of autumn flowers, golden and rust-colored, that nestled in her dark hair. "You look beautiful," Martha said, her eyes shining with tears. "Robert is the luckiest man alive." "I am the lucky one," Penelope replied, looking at herself in the mirror. She looked happy, she realized, happier than she had looked in years. "He came back for me, Martha. After all this time, he came back." "He did," Martha agreed. "And now you get your happy ending." The church was packed when they arrived. It seemed like everyone in Val Verde had turned out for the wedding. Penelope could hear the murmur of voices, the occasional laugh, the rustle of people settling into pews. Harold appeared at her side, looking uncomfortable in his Sunday best. "You ready for this, daughter?" "More than ready, Papa." "Then let us go make you a married woman." The doors opened, and Penelope had eyes for only one person. Robert stood at the altar, looking impossibly handsome in a new suit, his hair neatly combed, his face split in the widest smile she had ever seen. When their eyes met, he mouthed the words, "I love you," and she felt her heart swell to bursting. The ceremony was a blur. Penelope heard herself repeating vows, heard Robert's steady voice promising to love and cherish her, felt the cool metal of a ring sliding onto her finger. And then the Reverend was saying, "You may kiss the bride," and Robert was pulling her close and kissing her in front of God and everyone, and she did not care one bit. They emerged from the church to cheers and well wishes, rice raining down on them like blessings. There was a reception in the town hall with food and music and dancing. Robert never left her side, holding her hand or keeping his arm around her waist, as if afraid she might disappear if he let go. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Reid?" he asked when the music started, his eyes twinkling. "Mrs. Reid," she repeated, loving the sound of it. "I thought I would never hear those words. Get used to them." He swept her onto the dance floor, and they moved together like they had been doing it all their lives. "You are stuck with me now. I think I can live with that." They danced until the stars came out, celebrating with the townspeople who had watched them grow up, who had witnessed their separation and now their reunion. As the evening wound down, Robert leaned close and whispered in her ear, "Ready to start our life together?" "I have been ready for 10 years." They left in a shower of good wishes, climbing into a wagon loaded with their belongings. Robert had arranged for them to spend their wedding night at a small ranch house a few miles outside of town, borrowed from a friend. Tomorrow they would begin the journey to Colorado, to their new home and new life. But tonight was just for them. The ranch house was small but cozy, with a fire already burning in the hearth. Someone had left wildflowers in a vase on the table and a bottle of wine with 2 glasses. Robert lifted Penelope over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the middle of the room. "Alone at last," he said, pulling her close. "Finally." She wrapped her arms around his neck. "No more waiting, no more being apart, just us from now on." "Just us," he agreed and kissed her deeply. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other after so long apart. Robert was gentle and reverent, treating her like something precious. Afterward they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, talking quietly in the darkness. "I still cannot believe this is real," Penelope murmured, tracing patterns on his chest. "I keep thinking I am going to wake up and find out I dreamed it all. It is real." He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I am real, you are real, and we are finally married. No more separation, no more waiting, just the rest of our lives together. Tell me more about Colorado. I want to picture where we are going." So Robert described it all again, painting pictures with his words of mountains and meadows, of the house he had built with his own hands, of the neighbors who had welcomed him and would welcome her. He talked until her breathing grew slow and even, until she drifted off to sleep in his arms. When morning came, they had breakfast together like it was the most natural thing in the world, like they had been doing it for years instead of just one night. Then they packed up the wagon and began the long journey north. The trip to Colorado took nearly 3 weeks, traveling slowly with all their possessions and making sure to rest both themselves and the horses. It was like an extended honeymoon, sleeping under the stars, cooking over campfires, learning the rhythms of each other's days. Penelope had never been happier. Every morning she woke up next to Robert, and every morning she had to convince herself it was not a dream. They talked constantly, making up for lost time, sharing stories and thoughts and dreams for the future. "You ever regret it?" Robert asked one night as they lay by the fire, watching the stars wheel overhead. "The 10 years you spent waiting. Do you ever wish you had moved on, married someone else, had a different life?" Penelope was quiet for a moment, considering. "Sometimes I wondered if I was being foolish. Sometimes it hurt so much to hope that I thought it would be easier to give up. But regret? No, I do not regret believing in you, in us. Because look where we are now. We are together and we are happy, and that was worth the wait." "I do not deserve you," Robert said roughly, pulling her close. "Probably not," she agreed with a smile. "But you are stuck with me anyway." They crossed into Colorado in early November, and Penelope felt her excitement growing with every mile. When they finally crested the rise and Robert pointed ahead, saying, "There, that is ours," she caught her breath. The house stood on a gentle slope, just as Robert had described, with the mountains rising majestically in the background. It was beautiful, solid, and welcoming, with a wide porch and windows that caught the afternoon sun. Surrounding it was rolling grassland, dotted with cattle bearing Robert's brand. "It is perfect," Penelope breathed. "Robert, it is absolutely perfect." He helped her down from the wagon, his face glowing with pride and relief. "You really like it?" "I know it is not fancy or anything like the big houses back east. I love it. I love everything about it." She kissed him soundly. "This is home, our home." They spent the rest of the day unloading the wagon and settling in. The house was sparsely furnished, but Robert had made sure there was everything they needed to start. Penelope walked through each room, planning and dreaming, already imagining the life they would build here. That night, they christened their new home properly, making love in their own bed for the first time. Afterward, Penelope stood at the window, looking out at the moonlit landscape, wrapped in a quilt with Robert's arms around her. "I am so happy," she whispered. "I did not think it was possible to be this happy." "This is just the beginning," Robert promised. "We have our whole lives ahead of us, Penny, and I intend to make every single day worth that 10-year wait." The first months in Colorado were busy and challenging and wonderful. Penelope threw herself into making the house a home, sewing curtains, planting a garden, learning the rhythms of ranch life. Robert worked hard expanding the herd and improving the land, but he never forgot his promise to never leave her side. Every evening, no matter how hard the day had been, they had dinner together and talked about their plans and dreams. Their nearest neighbors, the Carsons, lived about 5 miles away. Emily Carson was a warm, practical woman about Penelope's age, and she quickly became a good friend. Her husband Joseph and Robert got along well, often helping each other with ranch work. "You have adapted fast," Emily commented one afternoon as they worked together in Penelope's garden. "Most Eastern women struggle with ranch life." "Val Verde was hardly a metropolis," Penelope replied with a laugh. "And besides, I would adapt to anything to be with Robert." Emily smiled knowingly. "Joseph and I have heard the story. 10 years is a long time to wait for a man. You must really love him." "I do." Penelope sat back on her heels, gazing toward where Robert and Joseph were working on a fence in the distance. "More than I can say, and he was worth every moment of that wait." Winter came early and hard to Colorado that year, blanketing everything in snow. Penelope and Robert spent cozy evenings by the fire, playing cards, reading, talking. Sometimes they just sat together in comfortable silence, content to be near each other. It was during one of these quiet evenings in late January that Penelope realized her monthly courses were late. She waited another week to be sure, her heart pounding with hope and excitement before she told Robert. "Are you certain?" he asked, his hand going to her still flat stomach, his eyes wide with wonder. "I am fairly certain. I think we are going to have a baby." Robert's whoop of joy could probably be heard at the Carsons' place. He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down looking panicked. "Should I not have done that? I do not want to hurt you or the baby." Penelope laughed, feeling tears of happiness on her cheeks. "I am fine." "We are fine, but in about 7 months you are going to be a father." "A father?" Robert sat down hard in the nearest chair, looking dazed. "I am going to be a father. We are going to have a baby." "We are." She sat on his lap, wrapping her arms around him. "Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. He held her close, his face buried in her hair. "Penny, you have made me the happiest man alive. A beautiful wife, our own land, and now a baby. I must have done something right in a past life to deserve all this." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Penelope suffered from morning sickness during the first few months. Robert was attentive to the point of being overprotective, insisting she rest more, not lift anything heavy, not work too hard. It was both endearing and occasionally frustrating. "Robert, I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him one day in March when he had tried to stop her from hanging laundry. "Women have babies all the time. I can still do normal chores." "I know, I just worry." He ran a hand through his hair, looking sheepish. "I waited so long to have you back in my life. Now we are having a baby, and I keep thinking about all the things that could go wrong." Her expression softened. She took his hand and placed it on her belly where the baby was just starting to show. "Feel that?" That is our baby, healthy and growing." "I am healthy. Everything is going to be fine." As if in agreement, the baby chose that moment to kick for the first time. Robert's eyes went wide with wonder. Was that? That was our baby saying hello to Papa. From that moment on, Robert talked to Penelope's growing belly every night, telling the baby about the ranch, about the mountains, about how loved this child already was. Penelope would lie there, her hands on her stomach, feeling like her heart might burst from happiness. Summer came, hot and bright, and Penelope grew round with their child. Emily helped her sew tiny clothes and blankets, and Joseph helped Robert build a beautiful cradle from smooth pine wood. The whole community seemed excited about the coming baby. In late August, on a day so hot the air shimmered, Penelope's labor began. Robert immediately rode for the midwife, Mrs. Patterson, a sturdy German woman who had delivered most of the babies in the area. Emily came too, to help and offer support. The labor was long and hard, lasting through the night and into the next day. Robert paced outside the bedroom, occasionally allowed in to hold Penelope's hand and wipe her forehead. Hearing her in pain was torture, but every time he tried to stay away, she called for him. "I am here," he would murmur, letting her grip his hand hard enough to hurt. "I am right here, love. You are doing so well." Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, a baby's cry filled the house. Robert burst into the room to find Mrs. Patterson cleaning a squalling, red-faced infant. "You have a son," the midwife announced. "A big, healthy boy." Penelope, exhausted and sweat-soaked, was laughing and crying at the same time. "A boy. Robert, we have a son." Mrs. Patterson placed the baby in Penelope's arms, and Robert sat on the edge of the bed, staring at them both with awe. The baby was perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists that waved indignantly at being thrust into the cold world. "He is beautiful," Robert whispered, touching one small fist gently. The baby's fingers wrapped around his, and Robert felt something in his chest crack wide open. "Hello, little one, I am your papa." "What should we name him?" Penelope asked, gazing down at their son with infinite love. They had discussed names, but nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at his son and his wife, at everything they had built together, Robert knew. "Thomas," he said. "Thomas Harold Reid. After your father, so he knows where he comes from." Penelope's eyes filled with tears. "Papa would be so honored. Thomas." "Yes, that is perfect." Thomas Harold Reid was an easy baby, which was fortunate because neither of his parents had any experience with infants. He ate well, slept in reasonable stretches, and when he was awake, he studied the world with serious dark eyes that reminded Penelope of Robert. Robert was a devoted father from the first moment. He would get up with Penelope for night feedings, changing diapers without complaint and walking Thomas for hours when the baby was fussy. Watching him hold their son, singing soft lullabies in his rough voice, Penelope fell in love with him all over again. "You are good at this," she told him one night, watching him rock Thomas to sleep. "I have a lot of years to make up for," Robert replied quietly. "Years I missed with you. I am not missing a single moment with him." As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, their life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch prospered, the herd grew, and they added rooms to the house. Penelope started a proper vegetable garden and chicken coop. Robert built a barn and broke horses to sell. When Thomas was 2, Penelope found herself pregnant again. This time there was no morning sickness, and she felt strong and healthy throughout. Their second son, William Joseph Reid, named for Robert's father and their neighbor, was born on a warm May morning with much less drama than his brother's entrance into the world. Thomas was fascinated by the new baby, wanting to help with everything. Robert had to keep a close eye on him to make sure his help did not become too enthusiastic. Gentle, Robert would remind him, guiding Thomas's small hand to carefully stroke the baby's soft hair. He is little, so we have to be gentle. Baby will, Thomas would say seriously, his toddler voice full of importance. Life was full and busy with two small children, but Penelope had never been happier. Every morning she woke up next to Robert, listened to her sons playing, looked around at the home they had built, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. One evening, when Thomas was 4 and William was 2, they sat on the porch together after the boys were in bed. The mountains were purple in the twilight, and the air was soft and cool. "Do you ever think about those 10 years?" Penelope asked, leaning against Robert's shoulder. "About what we missed." Robert was quiet for a moment. "I used to think about it all the time, especially early on. I would torture myself thinking about what an idiot I was, how much time I wasted trying to prove something that did not need proving." He turned to look at her, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "But then I realized something. Those 10 years, as hard as they were, they made us who we are now. They taught me what really matters. They gave you a strength and faith that amazes me every day. And maybe, just maybe, we appreciate what we have more because of what we went through to get it." "That is very philosophical of you," Penelope teased gently. "I have my moments." He kissed her softly. "But mostly, I just think about how lucky I am that you believed in me when everyone else said I was crazy or dead or not worth waiting for. You believed, Penny, even when I did not deserve it." "I never stopped believing you would come back," she said, echoing the words she had said that first day when he rode back into Val Verde. "Not for a single moment. I know, and I spent every day since trying to be worthy of that faith." They sat together in the gathering darkness, comfortable and content. Inside the house, one of the boys cried out in his sleep, and Penelope started to rise, but Robert stopped her. "I will go check on them," he said. "You rest." She watched him disappear into the house, this man who had kept his promise, who had come back for her, who had given her everything she had ever dreamed of and more. The 10 years of waiting had been hard, but they had led to this moment, this life, this happiness. It was worth it, she thought. Every moment of doubt, every lonely night, every time someone told her to give up hope. It was all worth it. Over the years that followed, their family continued to grow. A daughter, Grace Emily, arrived when Thomas was 6, bringing joy and chaos in equal measure. Robert doted on his daughter, and Penelope laughed to see this tough rancher reduced to putty by a little girl's smile. Another son, Samuel Robert, completed their family when Grace was 3. 4 children filled the house with noise and laughter, muddy footprints and endless energy. The ranch continued to prosper, and Robert and Penelope became pillars of their growing community. They hosted gatherings, helped neighbors in need, and watched their children grow strong and healthy in the mountain air. Thomas showed an early aptitude for ranching, following his father everywhere and asking endless questions. William was more thoughtful, happiest with books and learning. Grace was fearless and adventurous, keeping everyone on their toes. And Samuel, the baby, was sweet-natured and affectionate, generous with hugs and laughter. Harold came to visit when Thomas was 8, staying for 3 months and thoroughly enjoying his grandchildren. He had aged considerably, but his eyes lit up watching Penelope with her family. "You did good, daughter," he told her one evening as they watched Robert teaching the boys to rope a fence post. "You were right to wait for him. I was wrong." "You were trying to protect me," Penelope said, squeezing his hand. "I never held it against you. He is a good man, that Reed. And he loves you something fierce. I see the way he looks at you, even after all these years." Harold shook his head wonderingly. "Not many loves like that in this world." "No," Penelope agreed softly. "Not many." The years flowed by. marked by birthdays and holidays, by seasons changing and children growing. Thomas turned into a serious, responsible young man who took over more and more of the ranch work. William went away to school, determined to be a teacher. Grace grew into a beautiful, spirited young woman who could ride and rope as well as any man. And Samuel, sweet Samuel, showed a gift for working with horses that made his father proud. Through it all, Robert and Penelope remained devoted to each other. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, talking or just being together. They still reached for each other in the night. They still looked at each other across crowded rooms and smiled private smiles full of shared memories and enduring love. When Thomas turned 18 and announced his intention to marry the daughter of a neighboring rancher, Robert and Penelope found themselves on the other side of a wedding. They watched their eldest son say his vows, watched him look at his bride the way Robert had looked at Penelope all those years ago, and they held hands tightly, remembering. "Do you think he knows how lucky he is?" Robert whispered during the ceremony. "He is young. He will figure it out." Penelope smiled. "Just like you did. I always knew how lucky I was. I just had to prove myself worthy first. And you did. Every day for the last 28 years you have proven it." William came home from school a year later with a young woman he wanted to marry, a school teacher like himself. They had a quiet wedding and moved to Denver, where William had been offered a position at a prestigious school. Grace shocked everyone by falling in love with a doctor who had recently moved to the area. He was a good man, kind and intelligent, and he was the only person who had ever been able to match Grace's fierce spirit. Their wedding was the social event of the season. Samuel, true to form, took his time. He was 23 when he finally met the woman who captured his heart, the daughter of a horse breeder from Montana. Their courtship was slow and sweet, and their wedding was full of joy and laughter. With all 4 children married and starting families of their own, the house felt too quiet. Robert and Penelope found themselves alone together again, almost like those early days in Colorado. "We did well, did we not?" Robert asked one evening. They were in their 50s now, their hair touched with silver, their faces marked with lines of laughter and hard work and time. But when he looked at her, Penelope could still see the young man who had ridden into Val Verde all those years ago. "We did very well," she agreed. 4 children, all happy and successful. A ranch that is the envy of the county and each other. Always each other. He pulled her close. "You know, I have been thinking maybe we should take a trip. Go back to Val Verde, see the old place, visit your father's grave." They had not been back to Texas since they left 30 years ago. Harold had passed away 15 years earlier, leaving the general store to a cousin. Penelope had mourned him deeply, but had been grateful he had lived long enough to know his grandchildren and see her happiness. "I would like that," Penelope said. "I would like to see it all again, to show you where I waited for you." They made the trip the following spring, traveling by train this time instead of wagon. Val Verde had grown considerably, with new buildings and paved streets and even electric lights in some places. But the old general store was still there, and the church where they had married, and the cottonwood tree by the creek. They stood under that tree together, older now but still in love, and Robert took both her hands just like he had 30 years ago. "I never told you this," he said, "but the night before I left Val Verde, the first time I came here, I sat under this tree and I carved something into the trunk." "You did?" Penelope looked around. "Where?" Robert led her around to the other side to where the trunk was widest. There, weathered but still visible, were 2 sets of initials carved into the bark, RR and PH, surrounded by a lopsided heart. "I wanted to leave proof that I had been here, that we were real," he explained. I told myself that when I came back for you, we would come here together and I would show you. And then life happened, and I forgot about it until now." Penelope traced the letters with her fingers, feeling tears sting her eyes. "We should add to it." Robert pulled out his pocket knife, and together they carved the date beneath the initials. 1882-1912, 30 years together. Below that, Robert carefully carved 4 more sets of initials, TR, WR, GR, SR, for their children. "Now it is complete," Penelope said, looking at the tree that had witnessed so much of their story. "This is where it started, and now it holds our whole family." They spent a week in Val Verde, visiting old haunts and old friends, marveling at how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. Martha, now a grandmother herself, cried when she saw them, hugging Penelope fiercely. "Look at you," Martha said through her tears. "Still disgustingly happy after all these years. It is not natural." "It is not, is it?" Penelope laughed, looking over at Robert, who was deep in conversation with Martha's husband. "I am just extraordinarily lucky." "You deserved it," Martha said firmly. "After what you went through, after how you waited and believed when everyone told you not to, you deserved every bit of happiness you got." The trip back to Colorado felt like closing a chapter. They had gone back, remembered, honored the past. Now they could fully embrace whatever future they had left together. That future was full and sweet. Grandchildren began to arrive, one after another, filling the house with noise and joy whenever they visited. Thomas and his wife had 3 sons. William and his wife had 2 daughters. Grace and her doctor husband had 4 children, 2 of each. And Samuel and his horse-breeding wife had twin boys who showed every sign of being as good with animals as their father. Robert and Penelope delighted in their role as grandparents. They spoiled the children shamelessly, telling them stories and teaching them to ride and filling their heads with tales of the old days. The house that had been so quiet was alive again with children's laughter. On their 40th wedding anniversary, all 4 of their children and 14 grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There was food and music and dancing, just like at their wedding. Robert and Penelope danced together under the stars, moving slowly now but still together, still in love. 40 years, Robert murmured into her hair. 40 years since you became my wife. Best 40 years of my life. Mine too." Penelope rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Though I count it as 50, the 10 years I waited are part of our story too. Fair enough. 50 years of loving you then. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat, every hardship, every setback, every moment of doubt if it meant ending up right here with you. No more going away though," she said with a smile. "I have done enough waiting for one lifetime." "No more going away," he agreed. "I am staying right by your side until the day I die." They kept that promise. Through the years that followed, as their hair turned fully silver and their steps slowed, they remained devoted to each other. They sat on the porch every evening, weather permitting, holding hands and watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. When Robert was 70, he had a scare with his heart. The doctor ordered rest, which Robert hated but Penelope enforced ruthlessly. Thomas took over most of the daily ranch operations, though Robert still insisted on being consulted on every major decision. "You need to relax," Penelope told him one afternoon when she caught him trying to sneak out to check on some cattle. "The ranch is fine. Thomas knows what he is doing." "I know, I just feel useless sitting around all day." "Then sit around with me." She took his hand, leading him back to the porch swing. "We have earned some rest, Robert. We worked hard for 45 years. Now let our children do the work while we enjoy the fruits of our labor." So they sat together, watching their grandchildren play in the yard, listening to the sounds of the ranch going on around them. It was peaceful, this slower pace of life, and Robert found he did not mind it as much as he thought he would, especially since it meant more time with Penelope. They grew old together gracefully, their love deepening with each passing year. When Penelope was 72, she developed a persistent cough that worried everyone. The doctor diagnosed it as pneumonia and ordered bed rest. Robert rarely left her side, sitting by her bed and holding her hand, reading to her and telling her stories. "You have to get well," he told her one night, his voice rough with fear. "I cannot do this without you, Penny. I do not know how to be in this world without you in it." "You would be fine," she said softly, though her breathing was labored. "You are strong, Robert. You always have been." "I am only strong because of you." He brought her hand to his lips. "You are the reason I came back. You are the reason I kept going when things were hard. You are the reason for everything good in my life. And you are the reason for everything good in mine." She smiled at him, that same smile that had captivated him when they were teenagers. "I never regretted a single moment, you know. Not the waiting, not the hard times, none of it. Because it all led to this life with you. Penny, do not talk like that. You are going to be fine. You are going to get better, and we are going to have another 20 years together." But she was not fine. Despite the doctor's best efforts, despite Robert's prayers and the whole family's love, Penelope Harris Reed passed away on a clear autumn morning, with her husband holding her hand and her children gathered around her bed. She was 72 years old, and she had been the center of Robert's world for more than 60 of those years. Robert was lost without her. He went through the motions of living, sitting on the porch and watching the mountains, but there was no joy in it without Penelope beside him. The house felt too quiet, too empty, even when it was full of worried family members trying to cheer him up. Thomas tried to convince him to move in with his family, but Robert refused. "This is the house I built for your mother," he said. "I am staying right here." He spent his days remembering, walking through the rooms they had shared, touching things she had touched, trying to hold onto her presence. He slept on her side of the bed, hugging her pillow, breathing in the fading scent of her. It was Grace, his fierce daughter, who finally shook him out of his grief. She came to visit 3 months after Penelope died and found him sitting on the porch, staring at nothing. "Mama would not want this," she said bluntly, sitting down beside him. "She would not want you giving up on life just because she is gone. I am not giving up. I am just waiting." "Waiting for what? To join her?" Robert looked at his daughter, and his eyes were ancient and sad. "I spent 10 years waiting for her when I was young. I can wait a little longer now." "Papa," Grace took his hand, "I understand that you miss her. We all miss her. But she lived her whole life believing in you, believing that you would come back. And you did. You gave her 50 amazing years. Do not dishonor that by wasting whatever time you have left." "What am I supposed to do without her?" The question came out broken, desperate. "She was everything, Gracie. Everything. You are supposed to live. You are supposed to play with your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You are supposed to tell them stories about Mama, keep her memory alive. You are supposed to be grateful for what you had instead of mourning what you lost." Grace's words struck something in Robert. He thought about Penelope, about her unshakable faith, her strength, her joy in life even during the hard times. She would not want him sitting here grieving himself to death. She would want him to live, so he tried. He still missed her every moment of every day, but he began to engage with life again. He played with his great-grandchildren, teaching them to ride and rope just like he had taught his own children. He told them stories about their grandmother, about the woman who had waited 10 years for him to come home. She really waited 10 years? His great-granddaughter Emily asked, wide-eyed. She was 8 years old and fascinated by romance. She really did, Robert confirmed. Everyone told her I was never coming back, but she did not believe them. She had faith in me, even when I did not deserve it. Why did it take you so long? Because I was foolish and prideful. I thought I had to prove myself worthy of her before I could come home. But the truth is, she would have loved me just the same if I had come back with nothing but the clothes on my back. Did you live happily ever after? Emily pressed. Robert smiled, remembering. We did. We had 50 beautiful years together, 4 children, 14 grandchildren, and so far, 6 great-grandchildren. We built this ranch together. We grew old together, and I loved her more on the day she died than I did on the day I married her, which I would not have thought possible. That is so romantic, Emily sighed. It was, Robert agreed. And if you learn nothing else from your old great-grandfather, learn this. When you find real love, do not let anything stop you from holding on to it. Not pride, not fear, not hardship. Real love is worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth everything. Robert lived for 3 more years without Penelope, and while there was always an ache in his heart where she used to be, he found peace in the life they had built together. He saw his first great-great-grandchild born, a boy named Robert Harold, carrying on his name into another generation. On a warm September evening, almost exactly 50 years after he had ridden back into Val Verde, Robert sat on the porch and watched the sunset. The mountains were turning purple in the twilight, just like they had thousands of times before. His chest ached, and he felt tired, bone-deep tired. Thomas found him there the next morning, sitting peacefully in his rocking chair, his eyes closed and a slight smile on his face. Robert Reed was 75 years old, and he had finally stopped waiting. He had gone to join the woman who had never stopped believing he would come back. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half the state. Robert and Penelope had touched so many lives, built so much, loved so completely that their story had become legendary. 4 children, 14 grandchildren, 19 great-grandchildren, and 3 great-great-grandchildren gathered to say goodbye to the last piece of a love story that had spanned 6 decades. They buried him next to Penelope in the cemetery on the hill overlooking the ranch. On the headstone, beneath their names and dates, Thomas had carved a simple inscription. She never stopped believing. He never stopped loving her. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through generations, each one hearing the story of Robert and Penelope, of 10 years of waiting and 50 years of love. The house Robert had built with his own hands still stood, still sheltered his descendants, still echoed with love and laughter. And sometimes, on clear autumn evenings when the mountains turned purple and the air was soft and cool, people swore they could see 2 figures sitting together on the porch, rocking slowly, holding hands, finally and forever reunited in the home they had built together. The love story of Robert Reed and Penelope Harris became the stuff of family legend, told and retold to each new generation. It was a reminder that real love, true love, was worth waiting for. That faith could carry you through the longest separations. That some promises, no matter how long they take to fulfill, are worth keeping. Their great-great-great-grandchildren would eventually visit the cottonwood tree by the creek in Val Verde, Texas, and marvel at the weathered initials carved into the bark, testament to a love that had lasted through time and hardship and separation. And they would understand that they came from something special, something rare, a love that never gave up, never stopped believing, never surrendered to doubt or distance. It was a love that had built not just a ranch or a family, but a legacy that would endure for generations, a story that would be told around dinner tables and on front porches for years to come. The cowboy who came back after 10 years, and the woman who never stopped believing he would. A love that conquered time, distance, and every obstacle in its path. A love that proved, beyond any doubt, that some things are worth waiting for. And in the end, that was the greatest gift Robert and Penelope gave to their descendants. Not just land or property or prosperity, but the knowledge that true love exists, that it endures, and that it is always, always worth fighting for.